Of course Gunvolt 3 would be announced right at the end of me reviewing all the games. And I know a lot of people are for sure looking forward to that, but in the meantime, to help with the wait for that title, we got a spin-off called Gunvolt Chronicles Luminous Avenger X. Yeah, that's the title, alright. Anyway, this was to be a spin-off title, but it would have the same gameplay as the main series, and this was supposed to be a Copen-only adventure with no GV in sight. Kind of like that pitch for Gunvolt 2 I mentioned before. I did enjoy Copen as a playable character last time, so I was totally down for him getting his own game. It also helps that Inti Creates gave me a review copy for this, so thank you for that. It's time to see if this solo outing is just what the series needed, so let's get into it. So around 100 years into the future, the war between adepts and humans is still going on. Now adepts have become the dominant race of the planet, with humans being referred as Minos, are a near-extinct race. And the world is now run by the Sumeragi Institute of Human Evolution, who wants to wipe Minos from the face of the planet. However, Copen is still fighting a good fight, now given the name by humans as Luminous Avenger X. Okay. But one day he's ambushed by a woman known as Blade, and is almost killed, but is saved in the nick of time by a group of Minos led by a girl named Kuaku. Copen decides to help them out in exchange for their gratitude, but along the way he will have to face Sumeragi's new elite soldiers known as the Falcons, and have to look into something known as the Butterfly Effect, something apparently controlling adepts to Sumeragi's will. And that's about it for the plot. Overall, it's a lot more simple and straight to the point this time, not nearly as much time is spent on it, which might be a disappointment to some fans of the first two games, but honestly, I preferred it this way. Not just because I wasn't a fan of the first two game stories, but this story feels much more character driven and has much more personal stakes in my eyes. When you're the last few members of your race, a little more feels like it's on the line, and I want to help those kids out. They got my back before, so I want to return the favor. It also helps that Copen is way more likable now. In the past, he has been incredibly brash, arrogant, and such a tryhard with a very vocal hatred against adepts. While he still has traits of that, he is way more mellowed out now, and has a much more level head and treats his colleagues with a lot more respect. It's refreshing, and honestly, it's kind of cool to see how far he's come since the first game. And easily now I like Copen way more than I like GV. Now the other humans are sadly not really developed, and the bosses are just kinda there for their boss fight. But I was far more interested in Copen as a protagonist who carried the plot for me. It's not incredible by any means, but I found myself wanting to see where it would go more compared to the previous two games, so it's a noticeable step up for me. But I actually want to talk about some stuff that concerns the very end of the game, so if you want to skip ahead to avoid spoilers, here you go. If you have already played the game or don't really care, alright then, let's do it! So first off, let's talk about the swordswoman Blade. She ends up being the sister to Kuaku, who got brainwashed by the Sumeragi group, which I pieced together pretty early on, but seeing her devolve into madness and then be able to redeem herself by the end was cool. And with her abilities and personality, she actually became, alongside Copen, my favorite character in the series now. Plus, I'm just a big fan of her archetype. I would totally be down for in the sequel her being a playable character. And being like this series Zero with her sword, oh, that would fit perfectly! Yeah, I know there's this girl in Gunvolt 3 soon, but her design doesn't quite strike the same chord, and her gameplay doesn't look exactly what I had in mind for Blade, but we'll see when we get there. But the big thing I wanted to talk about mainly concerns the very last stretch of the game. Mainly when you get to that butterfly effect. You find out that the thing powering it is Copen's sister. Now it was revealed in Gunvolt 2 that she was actually a particularly powerful adept, which was a shock to Copen, and since he had a big grudge against adepts, that was a hard pill for him to swallow. So going from that to this is definitely a bit unsettling. But you wanna know what's even more unsettling? Yeah, that caught me off guard. Not to mention the fight itself involves a lot of twisted versions of the Muse fighting you, and it was easily the most unsettling part of the game. And actually made me sad having to put her down. A Gunvolt story actually made me feel something. This is the first for the series, and I hope we see more of that. But the thing that was a little weird for me was the biggest twist of the game. So, this isn't the same timeline as Gunvolt 2. Rather, this is based off of the bad ending in Gunvolt 1. Where Jewel and GV are killed, which allows the Sumeragi group to grow in power. And Copen was only able to survive this long because he became a full-on cyborg. Definitely a twist alright, but I won't lie, it does seem a little weirdly explained. And I had to talk with other fans to make sure that's exactly what happened, because the game wasn't too clear on that. But overall, I gotta say, I enjoyed this plot for what it was, and I think it worked better for this game overall. Again, not amazing by any means, but I think compared to the other games, this is a step up, and I'm way more interested in the plot of this sub-series compared to the main franchise now, not gonna lie. So this was the first Gunvolt with HD systems in mind, so I was pretty excited to see the presentation this time around, and, well... Okay, the best part is the UI. It's super clean and has a really nice modern touch to it. And I love that the super moves are even more extravagant this time, including your own, which make for great finishers against the boss. And the character designs are for the most part great. While I don't like most of the human designs, the boss designs are still top notch. Like Blade, for example, I love that design, and many of the characters look great outside and in their boss attire. Though, I have to say for this one, I couldn't help but think of Eliza from Skullgirls. And this dude, that dude is just Nagato from Danganronpa, and the powers aren't helping with that comparison either. Huh, that's the second review in a row I've mentioned Danganronpa. Maybe it's a sign. But sadly, that's where my praises really end. The soundtrack is still fine, but not really that memorable, with Lola's tracks easily being the best ones. That's the third time in a row I said this for the series now. And the character portraits in the cutscenes sadly don't change at all, unlike Gunvolt 2. And that does hurt because some of the happy sprites really don't mesh well with the more serious moments in the story. There also isn't an English dub once again, though being fair, this time there aren't really any level dialogue scenes, so it's all before and after the mission, so it's not as big of a deal. The most you get is Lola cheering you on in the bottom right corner. And the biggest letdown for me? The game really doesn't look like it made the jump to better hardware. This looks no different than what the 3DS could do, and honestly, environments look a lot more mundane. Fitting for the post-apocalypse setting, but not really that appealing, and I was hoping for more with this jump. So honestly, I think the presentation did take a step back from Gunvolt 2. But maybe the gameplay can make up for that. So the setup is similar to the previous games, where you got stages to run through, destroying everything in your path, fight the boss at the end, and move on to the next stage. Copen can still tag enemies and dash all over the place like a madman, though he was given a few new tools. For one, he can hover right after a dash, and you can stop that hover with a jump, and he can hover until he hits the ground for an indefinite amount of time. And once again, you're given weapons after defeating bosses that can be used against other ones a la Mega Man. He still does have his super move, but not his health refill anymore. He can customize himself with different perks, but now you straight up buy them with cash and no materials are in sight. Really, the biggest new addition Copen has in his arsenal is his Darkness trigger, which allows you unlimited weapon energy and makes every move much more powerful. However, whenever you're not locked onto a target, you take damage, forcing you to keep attacking. And that's actually about it for all the changes gameplay-wise. So what changes were for the better? So this time, there are considerable changes to the formula that I think help make the game feel like a much more cleaner package overall. For one, the shop system. Now it's straight up currency to buy new upgrades as opposed to the crafting system. This is how it should have been from the start, thank you for that. I get it that it was a means to get you to replay levels, but it was so luck of the draw if you were able to use any of the powers in your first playthrough, so I much prefer getting rid of the middleman altogether here. Copen was already a fun character in Gunvolt 2, but here with the tweaks to the hover I mentioned earlier, he controls so much more fluid now, and keeping the combo with him is much easier to do. Plus the level design is made only with him in mind, so Copen's dashing never touch the ground antics feel much more rewarding this time, and you're still given a great variety of weapons to choose from. My personal favorite has to be this giant green orb that became my go-to weapon after I got it. And I really like the dynamic that the game brings with Darkness Trigger. With you having to constantly attack otherwise your health goes down, combining that with the kudos system makes it for a really great risk versus reward mechanic that I hope to see return. And of course the boss fights are still the highlights. As always, they have fun strategies to fight against them, using your abilities to counter them. If there's one thing this series always gets right, it's these fights. And I think that honestly sums up what's great about Luminous Avenger. It just feels like Copen's gameplay from 2, much more refined and polished, while still adding in some new elements to keep it fresh. And the story that, as mentioned before, I was able to get into a lot more. But sadly, we still have some problems in here that haven't been ironed out yet. Unfortunately, Copen's outing can't quite shake through a few rough spots. And the first one is the shop, or rather how much skills can cost. Which is understandable now as it's just money and not money and materials, but this causes a problem for two reasons. 1. Currency can be dropped by enemies, but it goes on the ground, so you need to land and dash into it to collect it. In a game where to keep the combo going you have to not touch the ground, this feels like a big oversight. And honestly, this would have been fixed by letting Copen attract money to him if he was close enough or something like that. And the other reason is, missions, which in the past would give you materials or currency, are just straight up not here anymore. I know I had issue with them before, but their existence was never the issue. It was just how many hoops they made you jump through in order to complete challenges that you already completed in your first run. The solution isn't to remove it, just don't make it so picky. A side complaint, but there's a demonstration mode that honestly doesn't do a good job showing how Copen works. And because his gameplay style isn't exactly natural, I wish it was just a video explaining it to newcomers because I was only able to get a handle of it so quick because I already played Gunvolt 2. If you're jumping in fresh, the first few stages might be kinda rough trying to figure it out. Copen this time also has far less defensive options, as he can no longer heal himself like he did in 2, unless you buy a specific upgrade, and super attacks can be much more devastating than before. Also, Pervasion was nerfed in this game, now requiring 2 bullets to dodge instead of 1. All of these combined would be a bigger problem, I thought. Okay, here's the thing. Levels in this game are much shorter than previous games, honestly about half of the size. Checkpoints are frequent and heal you each time you run into them. Not to mention the reworked shop makes it so you're more likely to get tools that you'll actually use. And the boss fights? Look, Copen's Mega Man stealing ability thing, they had weaknesses in the second game, but here their weaknesses just snap their fights in half. They do so much damage, and they barely get a chance to do anything. Like, you don't even need to use your super move when they do this much damage. This poor dude here, Crim. Here I have his weakness ready to go since it was the boss I did before this. He gets all geared up and... he didn't even get to use a super move, oh my god. And Lola will even tell you when you straight up found their weakness. Even if their weakness doesn't do a whole lot of damage, it can stop them in their tracks outright, and Copen already has a pretty high damage output as is. Which sadly means a lot of the boss fights don't get to shine as much as they did previously, unless you specifically don't use their weakness, which kind of does devalue them in my eyes. And if I have to purposely not use the weakness in order to make the boss fights more interesting, that's a problem in my eyes. Especially because Gunvolt 2 had this right. And on top of that, your super move can flat out negate theirs, eliminating that obstacle, and it charges much faster since it's your only one now. And if you really need that boss to die, just pop that darkness trigger and lay waste to them, which you can cancel out of by using your own super move. I know I have been getting better in these games as I'm going along with them, but when I see the boss health going down this fast, I think getting better at the game isn't the main factor here. I don't know how this game is ranking wise as I'm a very casual Gunvolt player, but just from playing the game casually, this is without a doubt in my mind the easiest game in the series by a long shot. I rarely died in this game at all. It was mostly from a pit that I didn't figure out was bottomless until it was too late, this super move near the start of the game, but even then I just got revived right after, and the final boss, which decided to go back to Gunvolt 1's finale with having a really weird difficulty spike. Like seriously, what happened here? The game was such a breeze and then it decided only at the end it wanted to fight back. Saving you the trouble now, use your super when he uses his to cancel it out. Also, the screen effect that they used in the final boss really hurt my eyes, not gonna lie. Unless you purposely unequip Anthem and Pervasion, you're not really gonna get much of a challenge out of this one. Which wouldn't be as much of a problem if the game wasn't so short. I was shocked when I saw the credits roll after seeing the ending, which there's no secret ending this time, and my time clocked in at just under 2 hours. That's as long as one of the 2 campaigns in Gunvolt 2, and half of the length of Gunvolt 1. And after that, it's really only replaying the stages for higher scores, the score attack mode, or time trials. There's no New Game Plus mode, no other characters, none of that. There is DLC that you can get that's just a harder version of the blade fight and nothing else, and the price of the game is $15 bucks. That's not a lot of content in a day and age where I think there's plenty of other indies that have more content for the same price. So it feels really jarring. Luminous Avenger is in kind of a weird spot because honestly playing through it, it's probably my favorite one in the series so far. But it's like, the one I can recommend the least, and it leaves me in such a weird state of mind. I'm left in a bit of a pickle when it comes to recommending Luminous Avenger, because it does a lot of stuff right, making it the best playing game yet. Copen's control is smooth as butter, the level design is made all around as dashing, the shop working like a normal shop, and Darkness Trigger make for fun, fast-paced action that I think, while missing some of the uniqueness from levels in Gunvolt 1, might honestly be the best playing game in the series, and I can see myself going back to this one the most. But that being said, I think I can only really recommend this to people looking to replay levels over and over for higher scores and such, and even then, wait for a discount. This game is so easy with the boss fights that while fun can be broken in half with just a tiny bit of experimenting, and only 2 hours for the first playthrough, that's not much. And for sure not worth 15 bucks. It's a shame because I wanted to recommend it more, but it just doesn't have enough to go on. And until Gunvolt 3 comes out, that's it. That's every mainline Gunvolt game reviewed so far, and overall, none of the games are bad by any means. I honestly had a lot of fun with each one, but I couldn't help but notice how similar my feelings were to all three of them. I also noticed that with each game, it felt like the scope got smaller and smaller, which is honestly not a good sign. It feels like the series is getting more complacent with itself, and I don't think that's a good thing. And that's why I'm a little hesitant going into Gunvolt 3. I think they really need to hone in and start fine-tuning aspects of these games to make them stand out in an indie scene that's getting more and more competitive by the day. I'd say if you're interested, the Striker Pack is the best starting point, especially since Gunvolt 1 is probably the most complete game out of all of them. And if you enjoyed both games in there, pick up Luminous Avenger, but at a discount. While I'm probably looking forward to a Luminous Avenger 2 more than Gunvolt 3, I'm in absolutely no rush to play it, and I hope they take their time and make it something more. Man, the past few videos I've done have left me in such a weird state of mind. I can't say a simple yes or no do I like a game, it's gotta have all of these weird mixed feelings. Kind of hope that switches in the future, to be honest. Future. You know, I think there's a franchise I haven't gone back to in a really long time, and considering recent announcements, I think I'll see you guys in the future.